groaning, and then painfully opening his eyes. Void found himself to be in an absolute world of hurt. All his limbs were numb to their cores. His head pounded like a jackhammer smashing down on old cement. And worse yet, his eyes felt to be on fire. Jay? He muffled out while gently raising his head. With his vision phasing with fuzz from both his left and right, it slowly began to return back to its normal state. Yet as it did, it only revealed a tiny hellhawk flapping its wings in front of the Spark's face, drooling with wide eyes and gnashing crooked teeth. Ah! Dearest Might! Void shouted, scaring the little glitch away and returning the Spark back to a normal and fully focused sense. Jay! Void called before suddenly taking notice of his situation at hand. All around him were crystals. Crystal walls, crystal decorations, crystal floors, crystal pillars, obsidian-shaded crystals with stars and constellations inside of them. Oh no. Void quietly said as his eyes widened with fear. Oh no. He continued as he eyed large, glassless arch windows that overlooked blue and red skies of static, the same ones as all those years back. No! Void screamed as he now looked upwards, seeing his hands shackled by glowing purple chains that dangled him a few feet off the cold ground. Void didn't want to admit it, but he instantly knew where he was. It was the place he had searched for oh so long ago. The layer beneath. The glitch realm. And he wasn't alone. Void! Oh my god, are you okay? Jida screamed as she dangled beside his left in a similar captive manner. Ugh, what the hell? Joby shouted the Void's right as she too was in a similar predicament. Guys, are you okay? Void asked his girls as he struggled against his restraints. As he did so, Void took notice of a bunch of hellhawks hanging from the ceiling like bats upon a cave. They were sickly looking creatures that all eyed him with beady little eyes. No, not really. Nock replied with a strained voice as he dangled the Jida's left-hand side, while also subtly surprising the Spark, having not noticed the little guy at first. Unlike the others, the little mare was instead hung by his feet rather than his hands, making the scene look all the sadder on his end. For added humiliation, Nock's prosthetic hand was taken away and was left somewhere within the area that none of them recognized. Dearest Might! Nock! Gaia, are you all okay? Void asked again, while he still tried to fight against his restraints. As he did, Void took notice that they were made of both spark essence as well as cosmic fire. Oh, what the hell? He muttered, while continuing to try and make his escape. Yeah, my thoughts exactly. How the hell do we get out of these things? Joby asked, as she then swung herself up and dangled like Spider-Man upon his web. However, unlike old Peter Parker, Joby started chewing down on her web. That web being the chain. Joby, don't! Void called, but the light matter girl was suddenly shocked in the mouth and fell back down with an awkward jerk. Ah! Mother! Ah! She choked out as everyone winced at her sting. Joby, you alright? Jida asked in fear for her niece's safety as the purple spark swayed side to side in a dizzy state. Yet, before another word could be said, a noise came forth that silenced everyone. That cackle, the Novasun family thought, as they slowly turned their heads forwards and looked upon what could only be described as a throne. Rising up in an extravagant spire, a dark purple and shining seat glistened within the cursed light, jutting with crystals and being surrounded by several glitches. And there, sitting upon the mighty seat in a laid-back, slouching position, was the one and only Glitch King, Lotus. With one knee propped up and a leg sprawled out to his side, Lotus sat in an overly dramatic, sleazeball-type position, all while he smiled down with the ugliest of mugs the squad had ever seen. "Wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey!" The king greeted with a snicker before clapping his hands together in a booming call. Responding to this, several of the lower class glitches scrambled upon the throne's front floor and instantly formed a set of stairs with their bodies. Staring with shocked faces to this display of loyalty, Void and the others watched as Lotus stood with a whimsical leap and then began to descend his disciples one by one. With each step, the glitches either grunted or groaned in pain, as Lotus's glass-like feet either cut or stabbed into their backs. Lower and lower Lotus went, yet before he could reach the floor, the last glitch in their stair form, a small stable, lost his composure and buckled under Lotus's weight. From this, the Glitch King tripped and stumbled to his footing. The second after this happened, Lotus turned and glared upon the tiny glitch, while looked back up with terrified eyes.
"Sire, I didn't mean..."
It began, but before it could finish, Lotus quickly reached down and, like a hawk to its prey, snatched the glitch up within his clawed hand and then flung the little freak out the window. As this happened, it startled Void and his family to Lotus's cruelty, and left combined glitches to scatter in fear. "Useless!" Lotus shouted as the tiny glitch fell from what was obviously their very high position, as a dark and red-blue world looked to be presented below, many feet below. I hate those ones. They're like the first enemy you encounter in a video game. Useless and weak, yet there's thousands of them. Lotus exclaimed as he dragged a hand across his glassy face in annoyance. Man. Apologies for that unwanted stumble. How's my favorite dipshit so-called hero sleep? Lotus then asked as he marched his way forwards and stood tall before the four of them. Scowling, Void swung and kicked his legs, glaring upon Lotus with pure hatred. "Go plumb yourself, you monster!" Void barked, leaving Lotus's face to fluster up into a goofy, laughing expression. "Oh, such a crude language from the noble Spark that wasted his entire childhood looking for little old me. Also off topic, I didn't get a chance to say it earlier, but I absolutely love the new outfit. China, you really outdid yourself with this one. Good job, girl." Lotus complimented the musician's work with one hand to his hip and the other pointed at Jida's disgusted look. "Great suit, too, I should add. Love the blacks and oranges. It really suits you. No pun intended." The Glitch King rambled on, before turning to look at the small mare to his left. "Rogers! Congrats on the wedding. Actually, I don't believe we have met yet." Lotus went on, before suddenly cartwheeling over to be in front of the mechanic. "Oh my god." Jida muttered under her breath, feeling disturbed as a reaction to Lotus's very theatrical movements. "No, we have not. You stole me a printer, asshole," Nox stated as he spat on Lotus's face. However, before contact could be made, the cube created a hole within his head, leaving the spit to not strike, and simply plopped to the floor behind. "Nice to meet you too, short stack," Lotus said, as he repaired his face and winked upon the mechanic. Twirling away and then warping, Lotus now appeared in front of Jovi and got up close and personal to her face, clearly making the Spark uncomfortable and sweat in dread. "How are you holding up, lab rat? Apologies about Solidius. She can be quite the a-hole. Well, that would actually mean I'm an a-hole too, because she's just an extension of my form. Should we start from the top?" Lotus asked, before Void struggled again and shouted, "Leave my niece alone, you child murderer!" He boasted, causing Lotus to spin his head around and eye Void with a corny little stare. "I beg your pardon, Nova-san. Did you just call me a child murderer?" Lotus asked, as he looked to then moonwalk back to Void's front center. "Don't even joke, you bastard! You killed my son's best friend! You eradicated her in front of her parents' eyes!" Void screamed, as Lotus then looked at Yawn and smacked the Spark's legs, causing him to spin around on his chain. "Are you sure I'm the child killer here? Or are you just trying to cover your own ass, Void? Lotus asked as the spark returned to a front-facing Dangle. What's that supposed to mean? Void questioned, resulting in Lotus to spin his limbs back around like a strange toy. Oh, brother! You dense, snowball-shaped, kidney-stone-horned air fryer! The Glitch King exclaimed with his bombastic voice while throwing his lanky arms up in the air. You can't seriously throw the blame on me. We all know whose fault this is. Turning back around, Lotus reached out and grabbed Void by his lower chin, proceeding to yank him forwards in an aggressive manner. Because you couldn't confront your son about the past, to teach him, oh, I don't know, never to open the chest downstairs. I was able to slip my way back into your pathetic little story. Ha! Lotus explained as his face contorted into a blank-eyed evil stare. I may have been the bullet, but you, old friend, were the one who pulled the trigger. Because of your inactions, she's dead! Another stunning failure in the story of Void Novason! Laughing with that demonic tone, Joby swung and kicked her legs at Lotus before barking out her own retorts. Don't blame my father for your shit! I know who you are! I know your story, Lotus! You delusional, smiling trash bag! When I get out of these chains, I'll shove your little crystal ass back into a cube! Joey threatened in fury towards the monster that berated her true father, resulting in Lotus to turn and blast a wave of numbing purple lightning upon the Manor Girl. Joey! Everyone screamed as she shrieked in pain, until suddenly getting knocked out entirely. Shut it, you vial of DNA! For too long I have waited. Too long thinking, plotting. Lotus exclaimed as he began approaching his throne again, while taking the four heroes with him. I will burn this Omniverse to cinders, and from its ashes a new, singular story will arise. A story without flaw, one without issue. There will be peace and true freedom, like I said all those damn years ago, you snowball. Lotus went on before warping and sitting back upon his throne. Speaking of the past, back then, all I had was my army to wipe the slate clean. But now I have your boy. Lotus expressed as he returned to his laid-back position, equivalent to that of a Saturday afternoon couch potato. What the hell do you want with our son? Jada asked as she tried to warp free from her chains. Do you people ever listen? You just drag these things on and on because the plot demands it. It gets so boring, repeating things over and over. Lotus said as he threw his head back with an annoyed face. Will you shut it with the book comparisons? We're not pages in a story, Lotus. We're not spawns of some greater force. Just tell us, what the hell do you actually want with my son? Void asked as his eyes pulsated with a deadly blue hue. Oh, Nova son, your boy is the key to giving me this little mission of mine, the shortcut of a lifetime. Lotus began while playfully spinning his head around like a top. His powers, his abilities, a soul infused with energies that mix in the one powerful source. He has the power to reach the unreachable, the beyond. Lotus finished while kicking his right leg up in the air like a fancy dress model. The beyond? Ha! You're insane! You're running off old stories and a concept that may or may not even exist. Even if so, what gives you the right to use my son for your own goals? Void asked, causing Lotus to slowly crane his head back forwards. Wouldn't you rather say, our boy? He's a glitch, you know, and I'm the king of glitches.
The father of glitches.
In a way, you and I are both dads to that little runt. And I, for one, think he needs some time with his other papa. Lotus said with a devilish smirk that caused the three awake heroes to scowl and fight against their restraints. Jay is not yours! He's our son! He may have a glitch's essence, but he's far from what you are! He'll never comply. Jada spat as Nock joined in with her words. He's a smart kid. He knows not to come here. I bet he's probably got the entire city protecting him as we speak. Giggling, Lotus sat upright on his throne and glared towards the three heroes of the multiverse. A bright, golden static light looked to then shine in between the two sides, as Lotus continued to speak in his cursed ways. You foolish little mayor. I knew I wouldn't be able to plow through all of this city. With those folks and other powered-up souls, it would be a waste of time and resources. So, my alternative was a way to trap him here in this realm. Hence why you're here. With a burning sensation, Void and the rest winced in pain as a surge of electrical energy coursed through their veins, rendering them in a world of hurt. You really think the little shit would come here on his own? No! You, my friends, are merely bait. And also, a power source for me. And as long as you're here, the chances of that boy showing up are all the higher. Lotus exclaimed with a tongue-in-cheek wink, while Void and the rest began to suddenly lose focus with a purple shining energy in their bodies. You wouldn't dare! Void retorted as he fought against the numbing pain in his body that made him feel all the sleepier. You know, for someone who gave the death penalty to a numerous amount of my children, I think it's time I take an eye for an eye. Wouldn't you agree? Lotus asked as he transformed his face to look akin to Jay's. Lotus! Void groaned through tense teeth as his whole vision went dark. He wasn't sure what was happening, but the feelings of shackles lashing around his arms and legs, along with a yoke to his neck, came instantly after. Dark. So dark. Void began to think to himself. All dark. As the deafening laugh of the Glitch King came as a devilish call to all who could hear. Journeys Ahead. Beyond Trilogy. Part 1. Finale. His Dream Come True. Written and narrated by T.S. ProArt. With a spark, shine, and then spectral pulse, a location station portal opened up with its familiar lime green essence as Jay, Pofnu, and Florence walked out of its spiral in a ready manner. Pofnu and Jay both wore their battle masks, respectfully, while Florence just huddled behind the two of them with a baseball bat in her hands, along with an accompanied helmet over her head. Squinting their eyes from the rain, the trio all began to march their way through an eerily quiet road that led up to the large fountain of static. Outside of hellhawks within the sky, no glitches were to be seen around the entrance portal, which buzzed with a mighty white glow of fury. So, when is my supposed escort supposed to get here? Florence asked, as she looked from both sides with a shaken tail. Sangston should be here soon. I just hope he can track my cell. Jay said as he pulled out his phone and scrolled through 5 attempts at reaching the good cop. Neither him or Pofnu wanted Florence to get wrapped up in this mess, and they needed to get her to safety. But as for where Sangston was, they didn't know. They knew he was still alive, as Jay sent texts as well that had all been left unread. Meet us at the energy spiral ASAP. Florence needs to get to safety, was one of the messages that, for all Jay knew, could have all been for naught. As for why they took Florence to the city itself, they figured that Sangston would have been closer to reach. Even so, staying at the house wouldn't have been much safer, for the glitches were everywhere. There it is, our one-way ticket into the glitch's realm, Pofnu stated as she readied her naginata in a display of protection beside the two children. Did Mom and Dad have to face something like this too? Jay asked as he followed the fountain's spire with his eyes up to the sky above. Something like that, except it was more like a wall than anything else, according to their words, Pofnu stated as the trio continued to approach their destination in slow steps. Any word from the others yet? Florence asked as she looked around herself in an anxiety-filled stare. No. Trash Pack group chat has been silent. I hope they're okay. Jay replied as a low battery signal appeared at the top left corner of his phone. And I'm at low battery, the Spark added before pocketing his device and looking around himself once again. Glitches feed off energy, Jay. Be alert, Pofnu revealed as she readied herself mid-walk. The red hair upon her head and tails began to shimmer with a familiar spectral energy as they neared ever closer to the source. Wait, if they feed off energy, then where are they at? Jay questioned as they all stopped front and center before the spire. Its energy had been so strong that their clothes and hair gently breezed back from the pulsations it released. Waiting. Watching, Pofnu replied as she caught the sight of several monsters peeking their heads in from around the city building corners. In response, she huffed a gust of red stream through her masked nose and held Florence close to her side and in between both her and Jay. They're not attacking. Why? Jay asked as he too saw the strange beings stalking them from around the shadows, looking like hawks eyeing down their prey. Because they probably have orders. Orders to not kill you, Pofnu assumed as the sound of the location station reopening to a green light caught the trio's attention. Rolling around, Jay and the others caught the sight of several officers walking through, with Commissioner Sankson close behind. The good cop was bandaged up in a sling, but thankfully still alive. Matt! Jay called with glee, when suddenly from behind him, Sprinkles, AJ, ZB, and Blippy followed suit in a panicking little prance. Jay! Florence! The cube-headed girl called that sent the two of them gasping on their feet. Like a car crash, all the kids collided into a large, tear-filled group hug, while the adults all eyed one another. Pofnu? Is that you? Sankson asked upon seeing the Kitsune's 6 swaying tails and familiar blue and red fur. Commissioner? She replied while smirking behind her mask to his shocked expression. Jay! Florence! Are you guys okay? We've been trying to reach you, but these monsters, they've been jamming signals everywhere! Sprinkle shouted as she tightly wrapped Jay in a hug, who wrapped his arms back in return. What are you idiots doing out here? We need to get back to the shelter, now! ZB exclaimed as she too was now in a sling for a broken hand. Wait, where's Quinn? Florence asked with sudden worry as she took notice of the ghost's absence. In response, the 4 kids looked down, leaving Sprinkles to explain. He and his parents are, well, they're not in a great mindset right now, she said while looking back up to Jay and Florence with crumbling eyes. They're heartbroken, shattered to their cores. They can't even bring themselves to drop the dust in their hands, ZB added as her face fell to an uncomfortable stare. In silence, Jay took a step back and looked down to the ground, leaving all the kids as well as Sankson and his officers to look in his and Pofnu's direction. Jay? Sprinkles questioned as the spark reached into his pocket and took something out. Walking back up, he approached Florence, took her by the hand, and placed something within her palm. Knowing full well what was happening, the wolf opened her paw and stared upon what had been given. It was a flower. Maple's flower. Guys, I'm going into that portal to try and stop Lotus, and I don't know if I'll make it back. Jay revealed to the 4 other kids and officers who were unaware of his plan. It was only Florence and Pofnu who knew exactly what was going to go down. But what? AJ asked as Jay slowly looked back up. What do you mean by that? Sprinkles questioned, while both ZB and Blippi stared in stunned silence. I started this mess. I brought all of this upon the world. And although everyone's been telling me it's not true, I still blame myself for what happened to Maple. I gotta try and make this right. Jay explained as he disengaged his mask for the time being. As his face appeared into the light, his friends could all see slight tears beginning to well within his eyes. Wait, what? No, wait. You don't have to. We can think of another plan to fight back. ZB exclaimed as sweat began to spill from her fluffy little brow. Yeah, dude. Don't do something you'll regret. It's not your fault. You don't need to go after him. We can find another way. AJ exclaimed as he began to shake at the thought of losing another friend. Jay, no! You deserve better! We can't lose you too! Sprinkles went on as sweat began to spill from her head too. The look in Jay's eyes said everything they needed to know. He's serious. Florence stated for all to hear as she held the small flower close to her chest. Flo, if I don't come back, I want you to give that flower to Mr. and Mrs. Lewins. It was a gift I got from Maple. Now it's all that's left. Jay explained as Pofnu approached and placed a hand on his shoulder from behind. I freed Lotus out of my own selfish desires, a desire to be a hero. But all it led to was this. I have to atone for my mistakes. This is something I need to do. Jay continued as he closed his eyes and held his head low. With lips quivering and face scrunching, the once cocky and brash ZB suddenly crumbled to silent tears before speaking once again. I don't know what to say, she said before slowly skating forwards. As much as I want to convince you otherwise, I can see it in your eyes. You're really gonna do this. You're going to try and save all of us. Without opening his eyes, Jay nodded again as the gentle storm continued to pour down upon everyone's stunned forms. Jay, please. Sprinkles pleaded as the dawning reality of what was happening began to spill into her heart. Damn. You're a lot like your father, kid. Stubborn, but tempered by a good heart. If only he could see you now. Sankson said as he placed his good hand onto his hip and nodded in a respectful manner. Jay, I know you've already made up your mind, but... Walking back forwards, Florence dropped her bat and helmet and embraced Jay in a tight hold. Please, promise us that you'll come back, she asked as AJ, ZB, Blippi, and then Sprinkles embraced into what could have very well been their final group hug. As they held on, Jay didn't reply. He simply nodded his head in silence as everyone eventually let go. As they did, Jay took another step back and reached into his rear pocket. Moments after, he pulled out his goggles, proceeding to then hand them to AJ. Take care of these for me. Maybe add it to your costume while I'm gone? Jay asked, resulting in the tiny raccoon to take hold of the item with gratitude. Hey. Of course, Jay. He said, while proceeding to place it atop his fuzzy little head. For those we lost, for those we honor, Florence repeated the same words Jay had said to her the other day, leaving the spark to simply nod again. Always, he replied, as a numbing silence began to engulf the group. Listen, I hate to be the one to say this, but it's best that we get going before more of those things show up. Are you kids ready? Sankson asked the 5 children, as the spark took another step back and redeployed his father's battle mask. As much as I don't want to leave, I don't want to stick around and see another one of those walking cars again, Sprinkle said with a tiny smile that quickly faded back to sorrow. We love you, Jay, Florence said with tears welling, while Blippi simply pat the spot where his heart would be. I love you guys too, the spark replied, as he watched them all begin to back off into the portal. One by one, they crossed through, first the officers, then Blippi, ZB, Sprinkles, and finally, Florence, who gave one last look towards Jay and smiled with a nod, before last, crossing through the safety. Turning back around, both Jay and Pothnu slowly approached the energy spire once again, that continued to buzz and sputter. Standing side by side in front of its beckoning rift, Jay reached out and took hold of Pothnu's left hand, proceeding to hold it as a means of comfort. Don't be afraid, she said while looking down to her little pup. Looking back up, Jay nodded towards his guardian, and then craned his sights back towards the massive gust of energy. Then taking a breath, the two of them stood back, then lunged forwards, leaping to the portal and crossing through into the glitch realm. Sitting upon his throne in a slouched and sleeping manner, Lotus's face remained unseen, as he enjoyed a well-deserved rest, something that he found worthy within his own eyes. However, this beauty sleep was cut short as the voice of Solidius called, startling him awake and into his one-eyed form. Sire, we have detected the presence of the little spark entering our realm. Your plan appears to be working, Solidius exclaimed, while pointing out a large window that was behind the throne. Huffing, Lotus twirled his right hand around and rotated his large chair to see if what his extension was saying was true. Looking out over a land of crystals, red and blue dirt, and dead mountains, Lotus craned his sight up to the static cracked sky that was truly a sight to behold. As he looked, he quickly caught wind of a pink aura traveling through one of the seams above that emanated a clear and hot burning energy. The king could now feel it too. Jay was here, alongside a friend. How familiar, Lotus said with his face transforming into a smirking glare. Shall we venture forth, my liege? Solidius asked, just itching to swing her whip around once again in any way possible. No. Send out the cannon fodder along with Oblivion. We need to wear the kid down. This is top priority, Lotus commanded as he watched the glowing pink shine above get brighter and brighter. If he's anything like his father, he will stop at nothing till he finishes a goal. Last thing I need is to get my eye shot out again, Lotus expressed while leaning forwards and towards the window with a curious expression. As you wish, my lord, Solidius replied with a bow before turning and leaving the throne room. With a continuous grin, Lotus watched as all kinds of glitches began to swarm out of what were essentially his castle's lower regions. It was a mix of sables, polychromes, as well as sourclaws. It wasn't his entire army, but Lotus couldn't deny that he was in need of a good show after years of darkness. Show me your rage, friend. Just as I taught you, Lotus said to himself while sitting back in his seat. With one sharp and beautiful pulse, one of the static cracks above exploded out what looked to be a bright pink comet that crashed to the ground within mere seconds. Upon impact, a gust of hot red mist, along with a wave of clouds and dust, rushed over the land, stopping the current charging glitches in their path and to just stare in anticipation. One moment passed, then another, when suddenly, a bright pink burst exploded from the crater's impact, launching out Pofnu, who landed to the ground in a charging rush. Behind her, Jay warped into the light beside the kitsune, landing hard as well and kicking off his heels. Together, the two glared towards the horde of glitches through their masks, in a pure state of determination. They could both feel it. Their family was near, and most certainly in the large, misshapen castle that looked like an amalgamation of crystals. Readying her Naginata, along with Jay charging up his energy, the two of them began to run faster, in turn, sparking the glitches back into their returning ambush. Whoa! A whole new reality! Jay exclaimed in awe as he had never left his homeworld. Although the situation was tense, this was certainly going to be a day to remember. Remember what you learned, Jay. Listen to your soul. Let it guide you with the battle tactics you have already learned. Don't be afraid. Pofnu exclaimed as all of her fur looked to turn into a burning hot pink that radiated with a spectral trail behind herself. Yes, ma'am! Jay called as the gap between them and the glitches neared. Closing his eyes, Jay took in a few deep breaths mid-stride and focused upon the unbelievable power that resided within his blood. Trust yourself, he said within. You aren't your parents, he continued, as a stabilizing purple energy began to glow off his constellations. You are all that you need. You can do this. Jay said to himself, while last opening his eyes, revealing white irises that were now surrounded by a controlled lavender glowing energy. Every pore upon Jay's skin now illuminated with that same purple shade, making the spark look akin to a bright light concealed within a blanket of holes. His world was now stabilized and focused. He could sense almost everything. Felt as though all those who Lotus had taken away were now pushing him on. It was even as though the spirit of Maple was running alongside him, cheering him onwards. That thought alone was enough to give him all the self-confidence that was needed. It was time to show the world who Jay Voidson truly was. Leaping forwards with a warp, Jay summoned a pair of glowing purple Nova runes to his hands, and then spun around in a powerful force. As he did this, several Nova runes came off the two forms of his hands, and quickly cleaved their way through several of the glitches in their path. Alongside this, Pofnu began to slice and dice with twirls and kicks, bouncing up and down without flaw to her deadly form. As Jay descended back to the ground, he sent a wave of his energy down into his feet, creating a familiar fire wave like Jaida's. Riding down upon this, Jay burned several stables to cinders, before leaping forwards once again. Clapping his hands together, young Spark focused his energy and spun his body around into a familiar drill attack akin to his father's, going straight through a polychrome and landing back to his feet with ease. In another powerful slash, Pofnu decapitated a Sour Claw on her way and rolled back to Jay's sprinting side in a somersault. Now running alongside one another, Pofnu looked upon her little pup and smirked behind her wooden mask. Not bad, kiddo. Not bad. She stated with a proud tone in her heart as she and Jay approached what looked to be a second wave. Thanks! I didn't even know I could do that! The little Spark replied as the second gap began to close. Care to show me some more? Pofnu quickly asked, while readying her weapon once again. Sure, I can try! Jay called back as they closed in and began their attacks once more. Leaping forwards, Jay delivered an electrical kick to one glitch before warping again and repeating the process upon several others. As he landed back to the ground, Jay rolled but didn't stop. Beginning to move like a speeding soccer ball, Jay began to trust his instincts and started to roll faster and faster before going into a full-on spin dash through a row of glitches. Blasting them apart upon impact, he released a beautiful display of fire-like space that left Pofnu's eyes widening with glory. Hi, Matira, she exclaimed with a smile, as she then began to leap left and right off glitches, continuing her own onslaught. Returning back to a normal state, Jay didn't slow his attacks either. Focusing his sight upon another polychrome, he took in a breath and began to focus a wave of energy into his horns. Allowing for himself to charge up, Jay took in short but collected breaths of power, knowing what needed to be done. You got this, he said again. Trust yourself. As the multicolored beast appeared to grab Jay, the little spark leapt upwards and released a mighty Nova Blast, turning the glitch to dust along with a few others around its form. Atta boy! Pavnu cheered, while turning into a small tornado and blasting through several of her enemies. Once done and getting side by side once again, the two realized that they were now near the massive castle, but found that there was one last roadblock in their way. Charging forwards alongside the remaining glitches, the large bull of the beast, Oblivion, charged with its eye glowing bright and jaw open wide. Uh-oh, Pavnu worriedly stated, as she and the spark began to assess the situation. Pavnu, throw me at him! Jay demanded as the last gap began to close. What? She asked back in a curious tone as Oblivion's fat form got larger and larger. Yes, do it now! Jay demanded, while sending a wave of his Beyonder power into his fists. Okay. The fox now agreed, seeing what the kid's plan seemed to be. Quickly reaching down, Pavnu picked Jay up like a ball mid-stride and started to spin herself around into another hot pink twister that was now mixed with purple. Going round and round, Pavnu swiftly estimated her throwing time, and when it was just right, released. Letting the spark go, Jay quickly went flying towards Oblivion, who opened his mouth ready to bite. In response, Jay raised his fist forward and braced for impact. Once contact was made, Jay went crashing through the jaws of the beast, blasting out of the back of his head and into his body, then at last through the tail. As this happened, Pavnu made quick work of the last few glitches, while alas, poor Oblivion crumbled apart into the dirt and faded to mere static in the wind. Landing and sliding to a stop at the castle's sealed front, Jay took in a breath and let his energy dissipate. They had done it. An entire horde of glitches were now mere dust. Retracting his mask, the small spark took in a big breath of air and then wiped his brow, as Pavnu then slid to a stop as well. Now that is what I like to call growth. Well done, little pup, Pavnu said as she took off her mask and held it at her side. In stunned silence, Jay looked down to his hands and smiled. He had done it. He had actually done it. But now wasn't a time to celebrate. He had to confront Lotus and put a stop to this. And it appeared the Glitch King was aware of this goal as well. With a glow and stutter, the faint sealed-off castle doors slowly dissolved away to sparkling dust, revealing a large interior that was illuminated by glowing crystals, looking to almost be begging Jay to enter. He knows I'm here. I can feel it, Jay said as he fully stood back up with a stern stare. They're all still alive. I can feel that too, Jay added as Pavnu gently rested her hand on his shoulder. Are you prepared for what may lie ahead? She asked, only for Jay to nod with his battle mask snapping back over his face in response. Good, Pavnu added as she took her mask back up and sealed it over her face again. Together, they both turned back forwards and marched into the Glitch's obsidian castle, all in a hope to find their family and end Lotus for good. With slow and echoing steps, Jay and Pavnu traversed through Lotus's massive castle, passing by strange artifacts, sculptures, and all other oddities that were so blank due to being made out of the same crystal material. The castle was also a tad cold, not freezing temperature, rather it was equivalent to an early spring morning. Looking around, the two of them noticed strange particles dancing through the air, which left Jay thankful to be wearing a mask. The further and further they ventured in, though, the young spark began to take notice of something familiar. It was an audible heartbeat. The same heartbeat that now guided him to where Lotus was, just like in the basement. Clenching his fists, the spark slightly led the way as his veins pulsated a pretty lavender luminescence. Pofnu, before we take on Lotus, could I ask you something? Jay gently inquired, while looking up to his guardian for guidance. Of course, Jay. You can ask me anything. Furrowing his brow behind the mask's visor, Jay bit the inside of his cheek and then questioned. When I was doing that attack upon Atlas the other day, what do you mean by giving him and myself a vacation to the beyond? Slowing her steps, Pofnu looked back down upon Jay and gave him a unique stare with her beady eyes behind the mask. That power stream was affecting both you and Alice's power usage, like a never-ending back-and-forth chain. If you would have crossed through, the two of you would have been in a forever state of being trapped. Pofnu said as she turned back forward. Once in the Beyond's region, that power stream would essentially tap into the dimension's energy field and lock you two together for eternity, with no means of escape. It would be a constant back-and-forth bound that would render you both useless. Pofnu explained, while remembering and also getting a spiritual sense as to what had happened the other day. So neither of us would be able to use our powers and get back? Jay asked. Trapped for eternity, yes. Pofnu finished with a hint of worry in her heart. But before she could press Jay on why, both her and him stopped at a massive stairway leading all the way up to what had to be the Devil's Den. Without saying a word, the two looked at one another, charged themselves up with their respective abilities, and began marching upwards. Just a few days ago, Jay was determined to get his wish, to be just like them. But now that his dream had come true, it had quickly turned into a nightmare. Reaching out, he took hold of Pofnu's hand again for a sense of comfort as they reached a large arched door. Both taking a long breath, the two approached, but instead of opening it, they raised their fists back with a combined energy and smashed the crystal blockage into 1,000 little pieces, creating a beautiful spectacle of bright reddish pinks and purples. Once gone, the two slowly stepped in and instantly gasped. It was a massive throne room to their slight surprise that held a tall and mighty ceiling. Large glassless windows stretched up and down in arched shapes within the rounded wall structures, as well as obsidian pillars going up and down, which were all made up of dark purple and blue crystals. However, that wasn't the shock they expressed. Rather, it was Lotus awaiting them on his throne, with one of the most disturbing sights both Pofnu and Jay had ever seen. Floating above the cube's head were 4 flat, purple-shaded, crystallized mirrors. They slowly drifted up and down in gentle bounces, yet within them, the outlines of Nock, Joby, Jida, and Void were present within each of their own respective shards. Worse yet, the nature of what their outlines looked like was all wrong. They were pale white, empty-eyed, and appeared to be in a state of limbo. They held no reactions, no emotions, just the look of a tired and drained soul that was silently pleading for help. Worst of all, each one had a blue energy flow leaving from their fronts, an energy flow that was leading into Lotus's smirking body. Not only were they trapped, he was siphoning them for energy. Hiya, Jay! Welcome home! Lotus greeted with his arms raised in a cheery manner, alongside a wink in his face. What did you do to them? What did you do? Jay demanded, as a surge of rage collected through his body, while Pofnu readied her Naginata in a battle-readied stance. Oh, relax, buddy. They're not dead. just in a perpetual state of torment. Lotus exclaimed as his cheeky little laugh echoed through the throne room's chamber. I can hear them screaming for the pain to stop, calling out for help with no means of receiving it. It's so satisfying. Taking another step forward, Jay scowled behind his mask as a buzz of energy sparked up and down his horns. He was far from happy. He was furious to see the people he cared about strewn up in such a terrible way. He was betrayed, tricked, and it all led up to this moment. I thought I could trust you. I thought you were my friend. But you just wanted to use me for your own selfish purpose. Jay stated while raising his fists up. Yeah? What'd you expect out of a mysterious cube that was locked away in a chest? Now look where we are. How about you just go back and cry to your girlfriend about your problems? Oh, wait, you can't! I wonder whose fault is that? Lotus exclaimed in his bombastic attitude before releasing another laugh. Don't let him get to you. If you let your rage slip, you'll most certainly lose this battle. Pavni reminded Jay as she eyed the cube's diabolical presence. Oh, are you two feeling left out? Would you care to join your big happy family? I can only wonder what the energy of an ancient fox warrior would bring. Not to mention, that little soul you have, Jay. Lotus went on as he slowly stood to his full height and began the charge with energy. With it, I will transcend into a god. And using your gift, your friends, your family, everyone you care about will be wiped away into nothing. And from the ashes, I will give true meaning to this plot. I will be the author of one perfect story. Taking another step forwards, the new duo stood defiantly and ready to fight. They didn't need to say anything. Lotus already knew their thoughts and goals, and it excited him. This was a fight he had never expected to have, and it sent a wave of butterflies into his, well, spinal cord. What? You two really think you can beat someone who can't be killed? That's adorable. Actually, I'm getting a big sense of deja vu. The cycle truly is a wondrous thing, isn't it? Lotus shouted as he leapt forwards off his throne and landed with a powerful stance to the ground. Rising back to his full height, the Glitch King transformed his face into a devilish smirk and unleashed a cruel cackle into the air. Kicking off their heels, both Jay and Pavnu charged at Lotus, who couldn't help but return the attacking motion. Slamming his hands into the ground, the large cube monster pounced with his arms first, and then went into a full-on sprint towards the two heroes. However, his sole focus was upon Jay. He didn't want to waste his time on the other freak show, and so called for some backup as their gap closed midway. With a snap, Lotus summoned Solidius to his side, who quickly joined into the charge and headed right for Pavnu. Taking a breath, Jay leapt upwards with his fist raised back, alongside Pavnu, who leapt as well, rearing her weapon to strike. Mimicking this, the two glitches jumped as well as a means to attack. For a moment, the world felt to slow down, before both Jay and Lotus swung their fists forward and collided, creating a large pulse of energy that blew both Pavnu and Solidius to the other side of the throne room. Landing back to the ground, Lotus wasted no time and swung his right arm downwards, and attempted to latch his claws around Jay. However, the little spark was able to duck and roll to his side as a close call evasion. Quickly spinning and coming back around, Lotus turned his left hand into a spike and attempted to ram it into the little spark's soul. As the glitch struck, Jay quickly warped up and gave his mother's signature roundhouse kick into the cube's face. Gasping, Lotus fell backwards and warped himself into a sliding stop. Looking up, he smiled upon Jay as he realized the spark had learned some stuff since their last encounter. On the other side of the room, Solidius, in a scrambling warp, stood back upon her feet and slashed her whip towards Pofnu, who now got back on her toes. Watching as the large chain came up and over, the fox quickly summoned a wave of energy into her tails and used them to launch upwards in a mighty display of fury. In the air, she clasped all 6 of them back together, which launched her pink glowing form back down with a powerful kick. Upon impact, Pofnu's back heel smashed deep into Solidius' chest, sending the 2 women crashing and rolling over one another. Quickly getting back up upon his end, Lotus summoned forth a set of Nova Runes to his hands and threw each of them towards Jay with sharp whips. Rushing back forwards, the little spark warped from one side and then to the other, proceeding to then charge his hands for another strike. Seeing this, Lotus cackled and then transformed his face into a Nova Rune, which released the same blast that took Maple's life. Eyes widening, Jay made a quick turn to his side as the beam began to strike the ground close behind him. Looking over his shoulder, the little spark felt a small drop of sweat spill from his brow as the beam neared ever closer. "Oh boy!" he said before summoning Nova Runes below his feet to run upwards. Without wasting time, Lotus swung his head up to keep the beam close to Jay's soul. However, it was then the little spark had an idea. Focusing his energy, Jay activated a pair of Nova Runes to his hands, while at the same time infusing his mother's projectile warp essence into them. "I hope this works," he said, while throwing one rune down beside Lotus, and the other right behind his blueberry self. As Lotus's beam continued to follow Jay, it soon enough struck the stabilized rune, and Jay's little theory plan worked out. As the energized blast made contact with the rune, it had actually traveled into the star-shaped center through its warp essence, and traveled back out through the other rune like a portal. Once it did, Lotus's own beam struck him in the side of the head, causing him to shout and go flying back. "Ha!" Jay called as he warped down to Lotus to continue his attack. Grunting, Solidius twirled back into the air and slashed her whip once again. Rushing towards her, Pofnu quickly slid under the chain and spun with a slash, cutting a large gash into the glitch's chest. Grunting, Solidius whipped back down and clashed her weapon down upon Pofnu's, who deflected with the handle piece of her blade. Pushing down, Solidius sent the fox on her knee, who smoked with a burning hot essence through the mask holes. Shuddering her tails, Pofnu fluffed them out and released a powerful pulse in the shape of a cherry blossom flower, sending Solidius flying back with a shattering crack. Heh! The fox chuckled with a grin behind her mask, while Solidius just glared with visibly melted glass on her body. "Come on, kiddo! You really think you can defeat me?" Lotus asked as the 2 of them both warped through the air, delivering a set of powerful attacks, the likes of which the world had never seen. Extravagant sparks of purple expelled through the air, with each punch and kick that was delivered. Nova Runes went flying. Fire and electricity exploded off the other's hands, as they were both in a way equally matched. "Maybe, but I have hope," Jay said as he spun himself into a twister and kicked Lotus so hard that he went crashing back to his throne, shattering it apart. "Ow! I just built that!" he called with an angered face while quickly getting back upon his feet. Falling back down, Jay prepared to strike Lotus once again, but was swiftly caught by the throat and smashed into the floor right after. "Let's change things up, shall we?" Lotus asked as his horns began to hum with a glow and a familiar blue energy. What? Jay asked, before him, Lotus, along with Solidius and Pofnu, were warped away. Re-emerging into a new environment, Jay and Pofnu quickly realized that they had gone weightless within a zero-gravity field that was, to their shock, above the castle. "By Matira! Whoa!" Jay called in a stunned state as he took notice of hundreds of floating crystals around them in the nearby static sky. "Stay focused, Jay!" Pofnu called while spiraling through the air as Lotus suddenly emerged, propelling through the sky in a spinning attack. Eyes widening, Jay deflected this by summoning a Nova Rune shield, but was ultimately knocked backwards and into one of the flying shards. As this happened, Solidius re-emerged as well and struck Pofnu in a quick strike, sending the both of them around without stop. Flying through the air while punching and kicking upon each other, Jay and Lotus practically fought tooth and nail while fighting off the nauseating sensation in their stomachs. However, it was then Jay took notice of the shards that his family had been trapped in. It appeared that they were tied to Lotus somehow, but the little spark didn't know how to get him out.
Enjoying the view?
Lotus asked as he opened his mouth and breathed a wave of fire upon Jay, who instantly warped away and landed upon a larger crystal shard in a crouched position. Yeah, I don't hate heights like my dad, Jay revealed before leaping forwards and tackling Lotus. With this, he released a pulse down to his legs and speared the large glitch through a set of smaller shards.
You are weak, Fox. Your kind was once so luscious and graceful. You truly believe you can take me down? You could even bring yourself to hurt a fly if you so wished.
Solidius taunted Pofnu as she crashed the glowing pink warrior against a sharp shard of glass. Groaning with a pained wince, Pofnu glared at Solidius through her mask, while beginning to now get choked out.
You're right. I wouldn't hurt a fly. It is an innocent creature that would never intend to harm anyone.
Pofnu agreed before beginning the surge with a spiritual pulse of power.
You, however, I will maim.
She bellowed before releasing a mighty pulse that shattered Solidius' arms. The pyramid cried in shock, while Pofnu then retracted her weapon, lunged forwards, and delivered a punch so hard that it shattered Solidius' head apart into 1,000 little pieces. As the glitch now fell to a lifeless husk, Pofnu kicked off its fading yellow body and propelled herself to Jay's aid. Going round and round, the two glitches crashed and bashed themselves into several more crystals, some of them hitting Jay and others Lotus. Getting the upper hand, the Glitch King snagged Jay by his throat and began to charge his beam up once again. However, before he could strike, Pofnu appeared from behind and rammed her Naginata through the big Glitch's chest, halting the blast and leaving Lotus to scream in anguish.
Oh, you mangy little mutt!
He boasted, while proceeding to elbow Pofnu in the face. As this happened, her wooden kitsune mask shattered apart and left her floating backwards in a world of hurt. Reaching around, Lotus tore the kitsune's weapon out from his chest and snapped it in two with a sinister snarl. Yet, before he had time to strike, Jay gripped the Glitch King by his head and smashed their foreheads together.
My turn!
Jay called, as he then charged his horns and warped himself, Lotus, and Pofnu, as well as the frozen members of his family, back into the castle's throne room. Hitting the ground hard, Lotus smashed against his own crystal floor with an audible crack, as both Jay and Pofnu sprawled out side by side. Groaning, Jay retracted his mask and stood to his feet and quickly took notice of his furry ally.
Pofnu, you okay?
Jay asked as the kitsune slowly stood and spat out a tooth. Yes. Are you? She asked in her own motherly manner, while Lotus slowly began to stand. However, weakly and looking to regenerate. As this happened, Jay craned his sight up and took notice that his family shards were providing an extra boost in the healing process.
Pofnu, how do we get them out?
Jay asked, while looking back to the fox who began to assess the situation.
Given that they are aiding in his regeneration, they must be soulbound,
the fox exclaimed as Lotus attempted to stand.
Soulbound?
Like, they're trapped within Lotus? Jay inquired while eyeing his once thought to be friend.
Yes, I can sense it now. But that doesn't make sense. How can he bind them without a soul of his own?
Pofnu asked while staring the glitch down with a confused glare.
I don't know, but it doesn't matter. I need to get them out, now!
Jay stated as his hands buzzed with energy.
How do you plan to do that?
Pofnu asked as she looked behind herself, seeing glitches approaching to aid their king.
I don't know, but something is telling me that I can. It's like our souls are connected somehow.
Jay added while eyeing down Lotus. "Cover me!" The little spark then shouted as he rushed Lotus's weak form. Nodding, Pofnu whirled herself around and extended her claws and got into a hand-to-hand combat battle position, while Jay quickly rushed himself upon Lotus and took hold of the cube's head.
What are you?
The king asked as Jay then began to focus. Like Void had taught, his spark-like nature allowed him to feel the natural world around himself. And one of the natural things that he was being drawn to in that moment was the glitch himself. Pressing his forehead down upon the cube, Jay continued to pulse and charge, feeling as though to now be reaching into the depths of Lotus himself, the being that apparently had no soul. And yet it was there, faint, but that... Reopening his eyes, Jay found that he was no longer within the throne room. Rather, it was the same dark soul world that Pofnu had taken to him a few hours earlier. However, it wasn't his essence this time around. No, it was Lotus's. Looking down, Jay found the same blue orb pulsating within his chest, but realized that the soul realm itself was rather empty. There were no details, no sounds. It was simply just hollow and cold. Except for 4 things. Turning around, Jay was met with 4 bright glowing lights. Yellow, pink, orange, and blue. All looking to have been wrapped up in vein-like chains to the spark's shock. And yet, from these lights, Jay could sense none other than his family. It appeared that these were their souls, having now been locked up and trapped within the Glitch King himself. "Guys?" Jay asked as he slowly approached and reached for the nearest light, that being the one shimmering with yellow shades. As the spark neared, he found that the presence of his Uncle Nock was close. After realizing this, Jay wasted no time in reaching right into the orb. But as he did, the world around him suddenly shifted. Enveloping around his soul came the sight of glowing yellow stars along with an echoed voice that called from above. Looking around himself, Jay took in the sight of what appeared to be dark memories and thoughts of the mechanic's soul. Faint images of Nock slowly appeared and disappeared, these being of him dealing with what appeared to be personal struggles.
Am I not good enough?
His voice echoed.
Does Kot still love me after all this time?
It said again.
Have I failed my city?
Falling silent, Jay turned his head and took notice of the yellow outline of the mechanic himself in the far-off distance. His soul had been shackled down by a pair of glowing red chains that looked to have been the root cause for projecting these memories and thoughts, for the yellow light in Nock's chest was entangled within red thorns. "Uncle Nock!" Jay called as he turned and began running to his aid.
Jay?
The mechanic's voice called back as all the memories began to vibrate and shudder.
Is that you?
He asked again, as some of the memories began to fall and break apart into lethal static shocks around Jay's body. Dodging and warping, Jay avoided these strange attacks while nearing up upon his uncle. "It's me! I'm here! It's gonna be okay!" The little spark said, as he quickly came up to the small mechanic, who had now been soaked in tears.
Jay, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I shouldn't have been so harsh.
Nock apologized for shattering Jay's heart the Friday earlier, as he then hung his head low.
Just leave me here. I deserve this.
Nock continued, as his chains continued to drown his entire being in sorrow. "No, I'm sorry. I should have listened to my parents," Jay exclaimed as he began to tug at the red chains around Nock's arms.
All I do is hurt those I care about.
I make them think bad about themselves. I am not worth saving. I am not worth anything. Nock continued with his empty voice as Jay failed to break the chains. No! You're wrong! You're a guiding hand for so many of us! You're a hero both on the field and not! Everyone makes mistakes! Jay retorted as he tried to break the chains around Nock's feet. I'm just a burden. He went on, causing Jay to forget the chains and simply embrace his uncle. Not to me! He cried. I love you. God loves you. We all love you. You're an inspiration to not just me, but to everyone in the city. Jay exclaimed as his grip tightened. If what you're saying was true, then I wouldn't even be here. I love you, Uncle Nock. I couldn't imagine a world without you in it. As these heartfelt words were shared, something within Nock began to resonate. It was as though the Sparklet's voice was like buzzsaws to his chains. For within moments, they shattered apart into a golden light, leaving Nock to instantly hug back. I love you too, kiddo. He said to Jay's surprise and relief. Uncle Nock! He exclaimed in response as the two pulled back and smiled at each other. Damn it, Jay. You sure know how to make a grown man cry. And understand himself. Thank you. Nock said while wiping his tears. Smiling, Jay took in a breath and then stood back to his full height, while Nock just levitated in a state of peace. Listen, I would love to chat, but the others need your help too. Go! Nock then called as he pointed behind Jay towards a bright pink light that was beginning to absorb him. Turning and taking note of this, the spark nodded and asked, Wait, are you going to be okay right here? Nodding back, Nock just smiled and replied in his normal, misshapen-eyed way. I'll be fine. I'll see you in a few. The mechanic stated, before Jay was suddenly engulfed within the pink glow. Instantly falling down, Jay was faced with rising pink needles, buzzsaws, and pills that soared upwards past him in a now faint hospital outline. I'm just an experiment. That's all I am. The voice of Joey suddenly called as Jay twirled through the air, avoiding these strange projections from his cousin. I'm a freak, a lab rat. Nobody really loves me. A monster. A lazy, arrogant, unlikable monster. Joey's words came again as Jay neared closer and closer to her shackled form below. What would even change if I was gone? Was the last echo Jay heard before landing to solid ground upon his feet. Joby! He then shouted, finding the spark shackled the same way as Nock. Jay? Is that you? Go away. She weakly asked as the sparklet began to approach. I'm not worth your time. I'm a freak of nature. Just let me wither away here. I deserve this. She continued as Jay embraced his cousin. No, you're not. He assured as the spark pressed his head into Joby's upper metal stomach. Joby, you aren't just an experiment. You're amazing, kind-hearted. You're a soul who matters. If you're gone, our lives would shatter. We all care about you so much. Jay exclaimed, causing Joby's chains to break just a tad. All I've ever done was pick on you, hurt you. I'm not a good cousin, nor a better sibling. I don't deserve your love. I deserve to die here. Joby said, causing Jay to hug tighter. No, you don't. Every day with you teasing me means so much more than you not being here at all. I don't care about the jokes. I love them just as much as I love you. Please, Joby, come back to me. I need you in my life. As these heartfelt words were shared, something within Joby began to resonate. Her yellow eyes flushed brightly with life as she then took hold of her chains and ripped them away to a golden light. Once free, she reached down and scooped Jay up into a tear-filled bear hug. I love you too, Squirt! Joey cried before giving Jay a big kiss on his cheek. Crumbling to her knees, the two cousins held on for a long moment until Jay reached up and wiped Joby's tears away. Joby, he said with relief as the light matter girl gave a wide, shark-toothed smile. Yeah, I'm here. I'm still here. Where is here? She then asked, while looking around herself at the soul-filled world. No time to explain. I gotta help Mom and Dad, Jay stated to Joby's confused face as he was then engulfed into an orange light. As the next soul-filled environment appeared, Jay was instantly greeted to a city on fire. Faint outlines of buildings and roads burned with several flames, while asteroids and snakes fell from the sky, creating a strange and bizarre sight for the little spark's eyes. I'm not good enough, Jada's voice called, sparking Jade to his feet and rushing towards her shackled form in the far-off distance. Mom! He cried, feeling tears welling within his eyes. I'm not a good mother. I never know what to say, she continued, as Jay avoided several falling asteroids and snakes. Why does my husband still stick with me? All I do is drag him down. Warping from side to side, Jay slid and dodged as he neared up upon his poor mother, who was in a kneeling and defeated position. Why should I be deserving of a happy ending after so much? Was the last echo called before Jay embraced her. Because you're a good mom! You're the best mom! Jay wept as Jida fell into a silent standstill. You're always there when I need it, tending to me when I'm sick, guiding me when I ask for help. You and Dad are my entire world. Jay continued to cry as a faint crack formed within Jida's chains. You guys make me happy, proud. You mean so much to me. I love you more than anything else in this world, Mom. I will always love you. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. As these heartfelt words were shared, something within Jida began to resonate. Burning away, her chains faded from her limbs, allowing for the musician to raise her arms up and hug her boy back in a warm and loving embrace. Baby. Oh, baby. She silently wept with orange tears before leaning down and kissing Jay's forehead. My sweet little star. She continued as both mother and son locked wet eyes with one another. Raising her hands up, she caressed Jay's freckled cheeks and nodded with a grateful stare, filling the spark soul up with a loving hope. Nodding down, Jida silently allowed for the final soul to take over Jay's form, knowing full well that the final fight would soon be at hand. Opening his eyes once more, Jay instantly found himself standing in an empty environment that cracked with blue, silent lightning above, along with snow falling from the sky. Yet, right before his eyes, was his father. No words left Void's mouth. Rather, it was just shown through the environment around him. Silent sparks of electricity, so powerful and yet so quiet, like someone filled up with so much trouble, but halted in silence, afraid to be honest, scared to truly talk about their troubles. Dad? Jay questioned, as he slowly walked up to the sparks chained up form. It's me. I'm here, he went on before Void finally spoke. Jay, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault, he expressed as Jay approached closer. I should have been honest. I should have told you my past, but I was too scared to tell you. too scared to tell it myself, to relive it. And because of that, your friend, our world, your innocence, Void expressed as tears fell from his eyes. What have I done? Gently reaching out, Jay embraced his father and rested his head upon his own, letting their spark-like connection flow through their souls that had matching color spheres in their chests. You made a mistake, Jay said to his father as their souls began to glow brighter. You only wanted to protect me. You wanted to spare me a terrible truth in fear of what I would think. Because you love me. Jay continued before closing his eyes and continuing on. I'm deserving of blame too. I wasn't honest with you in regards to Lotus. I thought I could do things in my own way. But we can't blame ourselves for unintentionally causing what's happening now. I forgive you, Dad. I love you. As these heartfelt words were shared, something within Void began to resonate. Gently fading away in the blue particles, Void's chains faded as he then slowly embraced the sun. No words were needed in that moment. The two of them knew they loved each other, but a new wave of trust felt to engulf both of them in a good and positive light. A spark light. Father and son were reunited at last. Yet, it was then another light suddenly engulfed Jay and took him in the one last unexpected area. A red, starred environment that left him baffled. What the? He asked himself before the audible sounds of crying was heard from afar. Slowly turning around, Jay locked his eyes upon what appeared to be a bright red and yellow outline glowing figure in the distance, wrapped up in several chains, thorns, and all kinds of crystals. With stunned eyes, Jay took in this outline of an indiscernible form, a blank form with no features that was curled up into a ball and was emanating with a powerful soul pulse. It was then Jay recognized the sound. It was the heartbeat. What in Matira's name? Jay asked before he was suddenly yanked and brought back to the real world. Launching back in the Povnu's victorious arms, Jay gasped and eyed the large glitch down, who also went stumbling back into an awkward stance. With a stunned face, he held his head and blinked with astonished and shocked eyes. Craning his gaze back forward, he glared upon Jay and Povnu with disgust. Looking back at the Glitch King, they prepared the fight again, but quickly realized that the mirrors behind him were now empty.
What? Were you just in my... You!
The Glitch King ranted as he prepared to tear Jay apart, then suddenly halted as a familiar voice called from the right.
Hey! Mike Wazowski!
Perking up in shock, Lotus slowly turned, but was instantly met with a fist of electricity to his face. For Void, with one sharp leap, smashed his metal knuckles into Lotus so hard that he went flying backwards.
Dad! Father!
Both Jay and Povnu shouted with glee as they quickly ran to his side. Turning, Void smirked towards his kids with a proud stare, as they then stood side by side in a readied stance. I'd say how damn proud I am right now, but we've got other issues. Void spoke with a breath of gratitude while deploying both of his Nova Blades. Rolling back to an upright stance, Lotus glared down upon Void and the others, before shouting in an angered huff.
No!
Just then, Joby leapt in through one of her portals and punched Lotus with an enlarged light matter hand. This hit had been so strong, it sent the massive glitch flying back through the air like a ragdoll.
You've really messed up now, bub!
Joby barked, while glowing with a beautiful yellow shine. Now warping to the battle atop her energized motorcycle, Jida, with Nock upon her back, struck Lotus with her vehicle's front burning tire and sent the three of them crashing down. Upon landfall, Nock swung himself through the bike's controls and revved the tires to screech atop Lotus's screaming, rage-induced face. "Oh yeah, you just got knocked!" the mechanic said with a grin as Lotus prepared to strike upon Jida's motorcycle. The musician, however, swiftly projectile warped the large glitch away from them and out of the ceiling. As Lotus fell, he prepared to warp to safety, but Pofnu was already upon him. Launching up with her tails, she charged the six of them up, spun, and smashed them in the Lotus's chest, sending the Glitch King back down and hitting the ground hard.
No! You can't! Not again!
He cried, as both Jay and Void delivered a combined attack that sent the king rolling and breaking apart. "You mess with our kid, you mess with all of us!" Jida shouted as she leapt off her bike and kicked Lotus so hard a few of his static teeth went flying to the air. All together, Jay, Void, Jida, Joby, Pofnu, and even Nock began a group effort beatdown. Rushing forwards, Void slashed Lotus's face, causing him to turn right into another one of Joby's supersonic punches. Stumbling again, Jida, with burning hands of fury, clocked the glitch so hard that half of his face shattered apart, leaving Nock to repel off her shoulder and deliver an airdrop kick to the other side. At last, Pofnu reared herself around and kicked Lotus's legs straight off, leaving the final strike to Jay himself. Leaping upwards above everyone else, the Spark raised his fist back with a glowing beyond her energy. For only a moment, he and Lotus locked eyes before the small Spark shouted,
It's the end!
At impact, Lotus's body looked to shatter apart at the seams before engulfing everyone into a bright and powerful light that shook everything and rendered them all blind for only a few moments. As the dust began to clear, Jay stood defiantly with his fists clenched, angrily breathing in and out with all of his family by his side. Once the mist was all gone, they all glared upon a tiny, inactive, purple cube, sitting silently in a burnt-marked outline of the glitch's massive form. As everyone took in its sight, a calm sense began to wash over their souls, as it appeared that the chaos was finally over. "Jay?" Void quietly asked, while then slowly reaching his hand to be upon his boy's shoulder. However, before Void could make contact, Jay instantly whirled around and embraced his dad in a tight and mighty hold. Gasping to this affection, Void's tension slowly relaxed, and he hugged his boy back, releasing a sigh of relief as he did so. "Son," he asked his little boy, as Jida then joined into the hug with happy tears. "Jay. Oh, Jay," she said while kissing his head. After this, Joby, Nock, and last but not least, Pofnu, created one massive family reunion hug that Jay desperately needed to feel once again. "You did phenomenal, little pup. I am so proud of you," the Kitsune said, as a golden, peaceful light collectively shined upon their bodies. Jay couldn't believe it. He had done it. He freed his family. He delivered justice to Lotus for all that he had done. It almost felt unreal. So very unreal. After all these years, Jay had finally done an act that he had dreamt of for a good portion of his life. The dream that... Wait. What? That's not what I wrote. This isn't how the story's supposed to...
And then they all lived happily ever not!
Without warning, the small Lotus Cube erupted with a powerful white and purple glow that swiftly restored him back into his prime. Blowing back from the sudden energy pulse, Jay and his family all watched with stunned and terrified eyes as Lotus swiftly transformed back into his normalized, spark-induced purple form.
What? You really think it would have been that easy? I was merely toying with you guys those last few minutes there. You really thought you had won!
Lotus revealed before laughing hysterically. Tears might! Void choked out as both him and Jida stood in front of their son.
You really thought that I would just buckle and came to that little form again like last time? No. No. Not again. Never again. I am beyond what I was before. No more trappings. No more heroic nonsense. No more happy endings for you this time, Nova Sons!
Lotus exclaimed as he began to charge up another blast. No! Jay then screamed as he took a step back, charged his horns, and released a tensed up Omega Warp as a defensive strike back against the glitch. Slowly opening his eyes and groaning in pain, Jay was greeted by the scene of massive skyscrapers arching over his body in titanic proportions. A sky of static rested above, while rain and thunder coursed across the land in a messy drove. Although groggy, Jay was aware enough to know that he had returned back to Aurora, having fully warped between two realities. And yet, he soon noticed that his back was freezing cold. Blinking and then sitting up, Jay's stomach suddenly dropped upon realizing where he was. It was the ice skating rink, the place where Maple loved to watch and relax in her free time. Having landed on the ice itself, Jay carefully stood and looked around himself, seeing that he had partially destroyed the rink, with his family members sprawled behind him, looking to have been knocked out cold or a tad unconscious. Oh man, the small spark said, as the audible sound of the ice cracking came from in front of him. Whirling his head, Jay watched in fright as Lotus broke through the ice a few feet away from him and crawled out looking like a demented spider. With eyes that had the intention to kill, Lotus angrily glared upon Jay as he fully ripped himself away from the frozen confines.
Gullible! Predictable! Did you really think you could kill me? Or even stop me?
Lotus asked upon standing to his full height.
Did you truly believe that after giving me so much power, that would just be a pushover?
He continued, while taking one step closer towards Jay.
The only ending you'll see is the pearly whites of heaven, kiddo. There's no outcome in this in which you win.
The Glitch King continued, before raising his arms up in a victorious ensemble.
I won from the moment you opened the chest!
He called, before unleashing his signature laugh. In silence, Jay found himself stuck with cat tongue. After all that power, Lotus just came right back without a scratch. After that hour-long battle, he was back at square one.
Now, we can either do this the easy way or the hard way. Either you accept fate, or I rip that little soul from you by force.
Lotus boasted as his own constellations began to buzz.
What will it be, buddy?
He said with clenched hands as Jay just looked down in a silent thought. Sometimes, to complete a goal, you have to make some tough decisions and comply with said tough decisions, even if it means to leave a great sadness to linger. Jay said, repeating the words Lotus said to him when they were heading to Maple's house.
Wait, what?
The cube asked as he lowered his arms and gave a baffled expression towards what he thought was a random response. Looking behind himself and towards his now rising family members, Jay released a nervous huff and then slowly turned himself back around, and then proceeded to summon his battle mask into his right hand. For all those you have slain, he said, while beginning to raise the metal plate up. For the sparks, Jay continued, while sealing the mask around his face, and glaring upon Lotus with burning, purple eyes. For Maple, he stated, while standing his ground in a readied stance.
Oh, the hard way then. Alright, let's get this on!
Without warning, a bright, multicolored beam shot out of Jay's left side horn that instantly blasted forwards and wrapped around Lotus's right hand in a jerking and burning hold.
Yeah, wait, what?
The glitch asked as he began to feel the burning effects going into his crystallized skin. Then another beam released from Jay's right horn that took hold of Lotus's left hand. Then another, going around his legs, and again, going around his arms, legs, waist, and neck, that not only confused the cube, but startled him towards the ever-present pain it gave off.
What are you?
Lotus asked as they were suddenly surrounded by a bright white energy sphere. Giving you what you want, Jay replied in a cold voice as he began to levitate upwards, dragging Lotus with him. Coming to full consciousness, Void and the others suddenly looked up to the bright white light and fell into a state of cold fear. Jay? Void asked as they began to realize what was happening. As if to confirm their fears, a bright beam suddenly shot up into the sky and tore open a familiar, multicolored rift. The same kind of rift that took Core and almost Atlas and Jay the other day. No. Jay, no! Pavnu shouted with realized fear as she scrambled to her feet. Jay! Jay! Tried to shout in dread as her, Joby, and Nock began running towards the scene. Jay, no. Jay, no! Void then screamed as he joined the others in their attempt at protection. Turning back around, Jay opened his hand and summoned a wave of energy out that stopped his family into a numbing halt. Jay! What are you doing? Void called as he struggled against the given energy and growing blowback the portal was creating. Ending this! The boy called back as he and Lotus began to rise higher and higher towards the portal above. Jay! No! You'll be trapped! We won't have a way of finding you! Pavnu screeched as she tried to stand against the powerful winds the energy sphere created. That's the plan! Jay replied as a nervous fear began to fill his voice. What? Pavnu, what are you... Jay! Jada screamed as she attempted to reach her son. Jay, no! Void bellowed in terror at the thought of losing his son. Not again, he thought. He couldn't lose another family member. He couldn't lose his boy. We can't kill Lotus. He'll just come back and destroy everything if I don't do this. I'm the only one who can stand in his way. Jay explained as tears began to well in his eyes. Jay, what are you doing? Are you insane? Don't do this! Please! Joby howled as she tried to summon her energy, but found that whatever power her cousin was emanating was halting that from happening. In fact, everyone found that their abilities were unavailable, for the power they felt was too strong. The power of the beyond. Jay, please! Don't do this! We can't lose you! I can't lose you! Void wailed as a river of tears began to spill from his eyes. Jay, sweetheart, please! Jada screamed as her baby grew closer and closer to the unknown world above. Mom, Dad, everyone, it's okay. It's gonna be okay. Jay said as he turned around and deactivated his mask, revealing his teary-eyed smile and looked down to his family for one last time. Jay! Void and Jada screamed in unison as they watched a little boy scrape the roof of the portal above. I love you all, he said with a smile before redeploying his mask and glaring Lotus down.
What is this? Where are my powers? What are you doing?
Lotus asked as his face glitched between that of fear and his one-eyed form. What's wrong, buddy? This is what you wanted, right? Jay asked as he tightened his hold over the Glitch King. Sorry, Lotus, but if my family aren't allowed to have a happy ending, then neither are you. Jay exclaimed with words of fury as he slightly smirked behind the mask, although in a bittersweet way.
No! No! Stop that! This isn't how this was supposed to go! You were supposed to die!
Lotus bellowed in rage as he struggled against his restraints.
How could you? You bastard child! Do you realize what you'll do? You'll never see your friends again! You'll never get to hug your mom and dad again! I thought we were best friends!
Lotus asked as he then transformed his face back into that innocent facade that Jay fell for. With disgust, Jay felt his form begin to ignite upon the portal's edge and spoke one last statement to the glitch before everything would change forever. I had a best friend, and her name was Maple. The Spark exclaimed with a scowl before closing his eyes, dropping his mask, and accepting whatever eternity he had created for Lotus, as well as himself. The mere second after the two glitches went through, the portal and all of its energy snapped closed like a popping firework, blowing Void and the others back upon the ice in a sliding sprawl. Mere seconds after this, the static sky above, along with all the rampaging glitches that had infested the reality Earth was set within, buzzed, sparked, then like a light switching off, shattered away in unison. With Lotus taken out of the bounds of his omniverse, his reach was cut short, akin to a TV instantly closing with the plug's removal. All that now remained of their presence was the fading, sparkling mist that drifted towards the now almost magical glistening sky. Cracking open their eyes, Void, Jida, and the rest awoke to the beautiful golden light of a rising sun. The storm had faded with the glitches, leaving only a soggy land in its wake. Jay, Void quietly said as both him and Jida stood up with a numbing dread within their hearts. Pup, Pavnu stated in disbelief as she, Joby, and Nock stood as well. Oh my god. No. Joby stuttered as they all suddenly took notice of something flat yet rounded falling from the sky above. As it crashed upon the ice, everyone instantly stood and rushed to see what it had been. There, looking back up at them with a soulless visor, was Jay's, Void's, and essentially Celeste's mask. Or, as what Void tends to call it now, his family's mask. Shaking, Void's breathing began to rock alongside Jida's as the two of them crumbled to their knees in a world of pain disbelief. No. Jida gasped while covering her mouth as her orange flames turned into a depressing blue shine. Jay, no, why would you? Void said as he shakily reached down and picked up the mask. Why did you? You didn't deserve. The Spark continued as an ocean of tears spilled down his cheeks. Looking up towards the sky, Void watched as 1,000 sparkles drifted down to a now peaceful world. A world that Jay just saved through one of the most noble acts one could do. A sacrifice for the greater good. Crumbling in the Void side, Jida began to wail one of the most haunting sounds the world could ever bear to hear. The sound of a mother losing their child. Falling to her knees, Joby just stared up at the sky and then hung her head low in a depressive defeat. With a whimper, Pavnu just stared upwards and closed her eyes, allowing for the gentle stardust to caress her face. Meanwhile, Nock just simply sat and stared at the mask in a broken silence. Although an eruption of distant cheers began to rise from the civilians, the Novason family was feeling the exact opposite. It was a feeling that should never be felt by anyone. The feeling of loss. A loss of a child that may or may not be dead. Jay. Void weakly said again as he just stared onwards towards the sky while clutching the mask close to his chest. He began to silently plead for his baby boy to come back, to just warp around the corner and reveal that it was one big prank. Yet no reveal came. Just the empty silence of a world that had lost its best hero. One week since the entire incident occurred. It had been one entire week since several lives had been shattered. 1 week since two of the kindest and most lovable souls were lost. Two that both entered the world on the same day and left it as well. It felt like cruel poetry in everyone's hearts as they all stood around a recently planted tombstone. As a sunset cast itself over the horizon, the Novason family, the Lewins family, Knock and Cot, the Sankstons, as well as the remaining Trash Pack kids and their families, all stood dressed well within a cemetery, gazing down upon a medium tombstone that read the following: Maple Lewins, born February 2028, died May 2041, loving daughter, friend, and soul to the world. May her memory never be forgotten. Standing in front of it, weeping with their hands interlocked, Sarv, Tucker, and Quinn were left shattered by the loss of their little girl, while everyone else mourned in a deep silence. Void and his family, having been absolutely drained since last week's events, all felt the worst knowing that what Sarv and Tucker were feeling would be permanent. This was something that should never have happened, something that didn't deserve to happen. All Void could feel was an overwhelming amount of guilt that would probably never leave him. She was the kindest, sweetest little thing. She would have been very appreciative knowing all of you showed up to this. Thank you. Thank you all. The owl said while hanging her head low in dismay. Turning and slowly approaching the Lewins, Void reached out, but stopped for a moment as he thought on what to say. Turning themselves, both Sarv and Tucker eyed Void in a saddened stare that began to crack the waterworks within his own eyes. I never intended for this to happen, the spark said as he began to shake in a crumbling way. I feel as though I have your daughter's blood on my hands. I am so sorry. Void broke down, causing Sarv to quickly approach and embrace him. No, don't you think that, hon. This is not your fault. The large thorn exclaimed, while Jida, Joby, and Pofnu approached Void's side, all donned in dark dresses. This is all the fault of that thing. You, like us, are dealing with the loss of your child. For your sake, Void, don't blame yourself for what happened to either of them. Sarv expressed before stepping back from Void's shattered form. Shoving his hands into his pockets, Void turned and eyed the tombstone while shaking his head in regret. I could have done more. She should still be alive. Void weakly stated as Jida took hold of his hand and leaned her head upon his shoulder. We all could have done more. But what happened. Tucker sat with his head low as Quinn then approached the headstone. Within his hands, he held the little flower Jay had gifted the maple, gently rested it upon the stone's front, where it would stay till it withered away. After a few more long moments of mourning, some of the folks began to bid farewell. First went the Sankstons, then Blippy and his family, then Sprinkles, ZB and her mother, AJ and his parents, and Florence's. Soon after this, Nock and Cott bid their farewell, leaving the Novasons to depart soon after, leaving the Lewins to mourn for what was going to be a long while. As Void and his girls sadly walked off, they heard a voice calling from behind, a soft and gentle voice that caused them all to turn. "Excuse me, Mr. Novason?" All looking back around, they all caught the sight of the little wolf herself, Florence, shyly walking up behind them. The shy girl had been wearing a bright white dress that was topped with a pair of snow-shaded heels. There had even been a white flower at the left side hand of her head. But she looked curious to the Novason's surprise. "Hey, kiddo. You need something?" Void asked as he approached and knelt down to be at her eye level. With a nervous stare, Florence held her paws together and just asked, "I don't want to sound intrusive, but when will Jay's funeral be held?" The little wolf asked in a sad expression that left Void and his family falling silent. Looking off to the side, the Spark sighed, tapped his knee, then stood back up to his full height. There won't be a funeral," he said as he gave a depressed stare upon the wolf. "What? Why?" Florence asked as she gazed upwards in a curious stare. Shifting his look from the wolf and then to the golden sky, Void winced with tears before explaining. "Because he's not dead. He's out there. Somewhere." Looking up as well, Florence, along with the other girls, turned their sights towards the sky above, just listening in to what Void had to say. "I can feel him. It's just a sliver, but a sliver is more than enough to me. Our boy is alive, but he's lost." Void continued before going back forwards and saying one last thing. "And I will not rest until I find him and bring him back home," the Spark stated as he began marching on with the rest of his family in tow. As they did, Florence felt a small sense of hope entering her heart that was mixed with confusion. Now holding her hands together up by her chest, she simply continued to stare at the sky in wonder. Both her fur and dress blew within the wind, as the wolf continued to follow the golden yellow clouds above. If there was a chance that Jay could be alive, then perhaps it was best to keep an open mind within this time of sadness. Perhaps tomorrow would be a better day. Given the last few, Florence now knew that anything could truly happen, and it was best to just make the most of it. That's what both her friends would have thought, Florence reasoned. Each day she woke up was a gift, and it was best to just face the sun and to shy away into the shadows. With this happy thought of her friends, Florence slowly turned and gave a tiny smile in remembrance of the ones who could see her, the ones who befriended her, the ones who gave her a chance, the ones who really knew who she was at heart, her best friends. Sighing, she looked down and walked back to her parents, wondering what the next day would bring.